They started sending me to the coffee shop on the corner to get cups of hot water. We were trying to get as many of them cleaned up as we could. After a while, that guy said, next time, leave the tea bags on the side. I mean, I was so young, I didn't realize. But you know what's strange? Thinking back on it now, I felt safer on that sidewalk, in front of the Stonewall, in the middle of a riot than I ever did in my own hometown. I spent so long standing on the outside, looking in. I finally found a place with people like me. People like me. I finally found a home. And I didn't have time to be scared in the middle of a riot. I'm not the kind of person that would stand back and not help. I've never been that kind of person. My grandmother didn't raise me that way. Had she been there, she'd have been running and getting hot water, and she'd have knocked the shit out of any cop who tried to stop her. She was a big, strong woman, looked and sounded like Ethel Merman. She had gay friends. A gay man in her town, Bruce Martin, was one of her best friends. They used to play bingo together. Growing up, I think my grandmother knew I was gay, but she never said anything. So I spent the next 3 hours running and getting as much hot water and as many napkins as the coffee shop would give me. After a while, they stopped giving me napkins. They knew what was going on. Some of us guys were taking the shirts off our backs, putting the clean shirts on people. Once they were clean enough, so no cab driver could see they were bleeding or bloody, we'd walk him down to 6th Avenue. And hail him a cab to Bellevue to get treatment. And then we'd come back, get another one, and walk them down. Around 4:30 in the morning, it winded down. There were people sweeping up broken glass, cars were damaged, parking meters damaged. It was a mess. They were cleaning up the Stonewall and the front door was open and curiosity got the better. I looked in. I could still see the bedsheet, tied up against the back wall. Some of the coins from the wishing well had come out onto the sidewalk, but you couldn't pick them up. There was too much blood. The coins were stuck to the blood. That story about the wishing well had gotten round. They beat that drag queen real bad. They really clubbed the hell out of her. She was one of the first they took to Bellevue. I don't know who she was. And after that night, I never saw her again. After that night, things happened so fast in the gay community in New York that nobody really, including myself, looked back and thought, oh, well, that was instrumental. It wasn't until 20 years later, when you look back on a timeline and here's where the Stonewall happened and what gay life was like before and after, that you realize the significance of it. It was a huge, pivotal point. Around 1973, you're getting into the next phase. You never heard of the police brutality anymore. All over New York City, you started having the after hours and illegal clubs popping up. Piano bars and Bette Midler at the Continental Bathhouse, the gay sauna. She was just starting to become a star, and Barry Manilow was her accompanist. They used to let people in off the street to see the show, so you'd have straight people in tuxedos and gays in towels watching Bette Midler chase Barry Manilow in and out of the steam room. It was a hoot. And all along the West Side, places like the International Stud all opened up with back rooms with nothing but sex. But there were never any raves anymore. And this would be anywhere from 73 to the early 80s. Then AIDS hit, and the world changed so much. In November 1983, I buried 32 friends in 1 month. One Sunday, I went to 3 funerals. It got to the point where I couldn't even answer the phone anymore because I knew I'd lost somebody else. You couldn't keep up. I worked on so many quilts. It was emotionally draining. So many friends I went to acting school with, who I was involved in theater with, they're not here anymore. I have 3 friends left from the 70s, from when I first started out. Every generation, a new gay person coming in, gay and lesbian, would look to the generation before for nurturing and guidance into the tribe, but with AIDS, we lost 80% of our people. We lost our dancers, our actors, our engineers, so many. There was a chasm between the survivors and the people coming up, and it truly never connected again. Which is a shame. Now, so many young gays, if a couple of older gay guys go into a young hip dance club, which I like to do, I still like to dance, you're looked upon as dinosaurs, and you're treated as such, and there is so much disrespect from the young gay community to the old gay community that sometimes, as an older gay man, it's mind-boggling. They have no idea what we did for them to have the rights they have today so that they can ride on a float with their ass out and not get arrested. Take the time. If you're at a club and you see a senior gay person, go over and say hello. They know you're not trying to pick them up, but go over. Show a little respect, a little interest, because you might get an amazing education about where you came from. I think I'm the only one left from that night at the Stonewall. I really do. I never meet anyone else who was there. I'd be surprised, I really would. Most of the frequent goers to the Stonewall, there'd be 130 by now, and probably the hustlers died of AIDS, so I think I'm the only one. I really do. It's nice to know there's someone of your age even interested, because there's not that much interest. Even I hadn't given that night in '69 a lot of thought. But for 3 months, after you asked me to do this interview, all I thought about was that night in '69. I remembered the blood, and the gore, and the horror. I didn't realize how personally it had affected me. I'd like the truth to get out there as to what really happened that night, to let people know there was a struggle, a bloodbath. If you think of any other questions, my God, just call me. This Facebook video chat really is wonderful. And bring this show out here to LA. You can stay with us anytime you like with my sister Missy and me. Missy, come say hi to the Playwright from London. Missy's eating her French fries. Nobody disturbs Missy when she's eating her French fries. I'm honored that you're even talking to me about this, so thank you so much. And to use my real name, Michael, I'm doubly honored. You have no idea. Thank you. Woo! Let's enjoy it, everyone. Come on. Woo!
So are you good if we have a little chat?
Of course.
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for coming out today. And thanks to Gaze the Word for having us here.
It's a real honour to have you
Thanks.
here, Alexis. Thank you so much. I can't think of a better way to mark tonight's anniversary. And we're live streaming on Twitter as well. So
hi.
Hello everybody. So first of all, I'm going to start off with the question, what is Riot Act?
So, if anyone doesn't know, Riot Act is my solo theatre piece. I interviewed 3 men. You've seen one of the stories. That's Micheal-Anthony Nozzi, one of the only remaining Stonewall survivors. I interviewed Lavinia Co-op, who I'm sure many of you know. We explore gay life in London in the 70s, the formation of the Gay Liberation Front, the underground drag squats of 1970s London. And then I interviewed Paul Burston, who is, of course, now an author and a writer, but was a very prominent AIDS activist in the late 80s, early 90s. And so we look at AIDS activism. And I interviewed the 3 men, condensed their lives into 20 minutes each, and I stand on this one spot for the show, and I played the 3 characters over the course of an hour. that's the potted history of it.
And how did the idea for it come together in your mind? But before you approach people for an interview or started thinking about it, tell us a little bit about the genesis.
So, I've written two other plays called Slap and Sex Crime that are very, very different to this style. Very kind of poetic, kind of wild, very theatrical, very fantastical, but then there's kind of a verbatim style that I work in as well. And I wrote a play called Safe, where I interviewed homeless and at-risk LGBT youth and created the play out of their words. And somehow Micheal heard about this play. I'd met Micheal in Edinburgh in 2007, and he got in touch with me and said, I'm one of the only remaining Stonewall survivors, would you like to use my life story for your next play? Wow. So I said, yeah. It's not every day you get that offer.
Right.
So it took a while for me to formulate what I was going to do with that. And then I decided I would play the characters, and it's really about the journey that the interviewer goes on, and as you may guess, the audience become the interviewer. So they break out of their stories and talk to the audience as the interviewer. So really the genesis of the idea came from Michael's idea.
Came from him himself. Yeah. He doesn't mess around, does he? So can I talk a little bit about the interview process? I mean, we kind of, towards the end of that piece, heard a little bit about the template for you interviewing, but tell us a little bit about how you chose, what to ask these people, because presumably it's a question and answer and you threaded it together.
Yeah, so I'm asking them things that I find interesting, that I think a queer audience will find interesting, that I think a straight audience will find interesting, things that we might, I don't want to tell people things they already know, so I'm really trying to kind of go underground and take a more interesting route with all the interviews. I'm writing the play in my head as I was interviewing them, so I would say, oh, tell me more about that. That's really, I've never heard that before, that doesn't make sense, and that's really contradictory, or as you can see, I use a lot of humour in the work as well, so really just picking up on what I thought would make good theatre. I mean, the interviews were hours long, so I had to be really brutal and really ruthless with the editing process. I'm not impersonating the guys. I guess the one that's closest to an impersonation is Lavinia, but I become an actor in a way who's received a new script, and I kind of run with it and work with my director, Ricky. It's not impersonations of the guys. I'm not listening to the recordings going, how did they say that? So they've been really brave in giving me their lives, but also letting me completely reshape it as well.
I mean, in his introduction to this new Stonewall edition of the piece published by Oberon, Ricky talks a little bit about, he talks about this being an uproarious and sensitive kind of portrait. And he also talks about how essentially you're channeling. Do you think that's a good word for it?
That's what we call it.
Right.
So we call it a channeling of the characters, and I say it's like a channeling of the queer spirit as well over 6 decades. And hopefully people will come and see it and realise what's led us to this point, and realise the things that have happened to the community, things that we're aware of, things we might not be aware of. As you can see, Michael's monologue ends in 2019. So we don't keep it in just 1969, and that happens with all the 3 stories. So the piece itself goes from 1969 to 2019, and it ends, I don't want to give too much away, because obviously you're going to come see The Last Night on Sunday at the Arcola Theatre, but it's very current, and it ends with a very stark warning for us all.
So, I mean, obviously this piece, I mean, there have been a number of places where you performed Riot Act, King's Head Theatre where I first saw it. I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what the experience of bringing this to the public has been for you personally. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure the kind of the research and the interview process was extraordinary. I mean, it's just an incredible, powerful, nuanced piece. Do you know what I mean? When I saw you after your performance at the King's Head, I was so incredibly proud of what you were doing. How you were kind of creating a memory moment for our community, and not just about the night of the Stonewall riots, or the night of the Stonewall riots, but these other pieces with Paul and Act Up and Lavinia. Tell us a little bit about what the experience has been like for you personally.
It's like a massive honour to be entrusted with these stories, to be able to, as an actor and a playwright, all you want to do is communicate with people, and it has been the most extraordinary experience I've had as a performer or a writer. It's very rare if you're on stage to actually look out into an audience and speak to them for an hour. Obviously, you're normally acting as if they're not there. We're on tour at the moment with this, as well as being in London. I did the show last night in Crewe, and there was people, older